So imagine this. It's Friday, January 16th, 2026. The entire geopolitical world is, well, it's buzzing. And we're talking about billions of dollars in trade, critical goods, all of it hanging in the balance. And the reason for all this chaos? A single missed phone call.
It sounds completely absurd, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Like something out of a political comedy. If you put that in a script, people would say it's not realistic. But, looking at the analysis in front of us today, this is the world of 2026.
It is wild. Today we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating piece from the Global Review. It's called The Arbitrary Arena by Fareed Novin. And the mission here isn't just about the diplomatic gossip, although, let's be honest, that part is pretty juicy.
Oh, it is.
The real goal is to figure out how a major power like India is supposed to navigate a world that's gone from a predictable partnership to something totally volatile.
Exactly. I think Novin's core argument, and it's a really strong one, is that we've just left that era of stability behind. We are now in what he calls the transactional arena, and that missed call you mentioned, that was just the spark.
Okay, let's unpack that right away because it really does set the scene for everything else.
Yeah.
The U.S. Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, coming out and claiming a huge U.S.-India trade deal was, for all intents and purposes, done.
Right. Technical terms agreed, everything ready to go.
And it falls apart. His reason? Prime Minister Modi didn't personally call President Trump to, quote, close it.
And Lutnick is really specific about this. He's implying that because that personal gesture, that ego stroke doesn't happen, Washington just pivoted. They took the deal off the table and started prioritizing deals with Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. It's diplomacy at its most transactional.
It's like high school, but with nuclear-armed states.
Yeah.
But India, they're not just accepting that version of events, are they?
Not at all. And this is where it gets really interesting. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs, specifically their spokesperson, Randir Jaiswal, they push back hard. Their position is that foreign policy shouldn't depend on, stroking egos.
Which is a very polite way of saying we're not going to grovel.
Precisely. They're arguing they were close to a deal based on merit. And the analysis suggests that by not making that call, India was sending a signal. They see themselves as an equal partner, not, a subordinate who has to call the boss for final approval.
It's a clash between dignity and this new raw pragmatism. But the fallout, the economic hit described in this report is serious. We're talking about tariffs that are, aggressive doesn't even begin to cover it.
No, aggressive is putting it mildly. Novin lays out this two-tiered tariff structure from the Trump administration. So first, you have a baseline 25% tariff on Indian goods. That alone is a huge problem.
Right, a quarter of the value just gone.
Well, then there's an additional 25% penalty on top of that, specifically because India keeps buying Russian oil. So if you're an Indian company, you're facing a 50% tariff wall just to get into the U.S. market.
50%. That just kills your competitiveness, doesn't it? How do you compete with anyone when you're starting 50% behind?
You don't. And the source mentions it's already hammering sectors like textiles, leather, gems. These are huge employers in India. Exports to the U.S. dropped by, something like 8.58% in late 2025.
That's real jobs, real money. But the threat of what could come next is what really stood out to me. This bill that just passed, the Sanctioning Russia Act of 2025.
Yes, that's the hammer. Senator Lindsey Graham is quoted calling it tremendous leverage, and what it does is it allows for tariffs of up to 500% on countries buying Russian oil.
500%. That isn't a tariff, that's a blockade.
It's a de facto embargo, exactly. Trade just stops at that point. And this is where the source uses this brilliant metaphor to explain India's whole situation. You said you liked the referee analogy.
Oh, I loved it. It just makes the whole thing so clear.
Okay, so imagine the global economy is a basketball game. The U.S. is the referee, but this referee doesn't just call fouls. He can physically move the basket while your shot is in midair.
So you do everything right, you follow the rules, you take the perfect shot, and then poof, the hoop is suddenly 10 feet to the left because the administration changed its mind.
Exactly. You think you scored, but the rules change mid-flight. And it's not just moving the basket. The ref is also throwing extra balls onto the court. Those are the secondary sanctions. So India is trying to play this U.S. trade game, but at the same time, they have to play the strategic autonomy game with Russia and Iran, all while the rules are changing constantly.
It just sounds exhausting.
It is, which explains why India is now trying to, change the game itself. If the referee's rigging the court, maybe it's time to build your own.
And that is a perfect segue to what the source calls a historic inflection point in technology.
Yeah.
Because while all this trade drama is happening, India is making huge moves in semiconductors, the Silicon Shield.
As of January 2026, India is officially in the chip-making club. This is a massive deal.
We're talking about the Micron plant in Gujarat.
Yep. Micron Gujarat is now in commercial production. And right next door, you've got Tata Electronics in Dallara starting their high-volume trial runs. The report says they're hitting 50,000 wafers a month.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. So Tata is doing 28 nanometer and 50 nanometer nodes. Now, for anyone who follows tech, you know the latest iPhone is using like 3 nanometer chips. So 28 millimeter, that sounds kind of old, doesn't it?
It's not the bleeding edge, no. You won't be training a giant AI model on a 28 millimeter chip. But, and this is so crucial, these are the workhorse chips. These are the chips inside your car, your washing machine, the power grid, telecom equipment, even missile guidance systems.
So it's not about having the flashiest tech. It's about self-reliance. It's about keeping the lights on.
Exactly right. By making these at home, India is no longer completely dependent on Taiwan or China for the absolute basics of a modern economy. It's about resilience. If a conflict kicks off in the South China Sea, India's car factories don't just shut down.
That makes perfect sense. It's an insurance policy. But there was some U.S. drama here too, right? This Pax Silica thing.
Yes, Pax Silica. So this is the U.S.-led alliance to secure the semiconductor supply chain. It's like a democratic tech club, the U.S., Japan, the Netherlands. And initially, India was left out. A total snub.
Ouch. Another message being sent, I guess.
Very loud one. But in a total reversal, and this shows you how fast this arbitrary arena moves. Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. ambassador announced India is now invited as a full member.
So they went from being on the outside looking in to getting a seat at the main table in just a few weeks. Why the change of heart?
I think the U.S. realized the math doesn't work without India. If you truly want to counterweight to China's manufacturing might, you can't leave 1 billion-plus people on the sidelines. But the expert take here is that this hardwires India into this trusted network, which is great for capital and tech transfer, but it also comes with new constraints on how much they can work with Chinese tech.
Right. More strings attached. There's always this high wire act. And speaking of tech defining the future, we have to talk about AI. Because according to this report, next month, February 2026, is going to be huge for New Delhi.
The AI Impact Summit. This is India planting its flag in the ground. And you just have to look at the guest list mentioned. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, Sam Altman from OpenAI, Sundar Pichai, Bill Gates, Demis Hassabis from DeepMind.
That's the entire Mount Rushmore of AI, all descending on New Delhi.
It is. And India has a very specific pitch. They're pushing this idea of democratizing AI. Their argument is that the global south can't just be consumers of AI built in Silicon Valley. They have to be developers, too. They need what they're calling compute sovereignty.
Compute sovereignty. I like that.
Yeah.
It implies that if you don't control the processing, you're not really in control at all.
That's the entire point. The source points out that right now, North America, China, and Europe are projected to get something like 84% of all the GDP gains from AI. India is looking at that and saying, no, that distribution is not sustainable.
And they have credibility here, right? I mean, they've already deployed AI at scale for 1.4 billion people in things like agriculture and healthcare.
They have the scale, absolutely. But the report also highlights a major weakness, the talent gap. Niti Aayog, the government's own think tank, is warning that the supply of AI talent is only about 50% of the demand. So they have the ambition, but they need to build the workforce, and fast.
It's a race. Okay, so we have trade wars, we have chip factories, and AI summits. But the report stresses that India's strategy isn't just about the U.S. or tech. It's this broader concept of multilateral hedging, basically having a foot on every court.
This is the absolute core of their strategy. If the U.S. is unpredictable, if that referee keeps moving the basket, you don't bet everything on the American game, you look to Europe.
And that's happening literally right now. The source says a huge free trade agreement with the EU is about to be signed.
Yeah, any day now, between January 25th and 27th. And the timing is obviously not a coincidence. As Washington is hitting India with tariffs, Brussels is lowering them. India is deliberately using the stable, predictable EU to balance out the arbitrary U.S.
A strategic rebound. But then we have to talk about the bear in the room, Russia.
Yes. The Russia piece is where this high-wire act gets most perilous. Because despite those 50% tariffs, despite the threat of 500% sanctions, India is not backing down on buying Russian oil. In fact, 38% of all Russia's crude exports now go to India.
Why? Is it just about the cheap energy?
That's part of it, for sure. It helps keep their economy running. But the bigger strategic reason is about what they call the RIC triangle: Russia, India, and China.
Okay, break that down for us. What's the logic there?
India's nightmare scenario is a Russia that becomes so weak and isolated that it becomes totally dependent on China, a vassal state to Beijing.
Which would leave India effectively encircled. You'd have China on one border and a China-controlled Russia on another.
Exactly. So New Delhi keeps buying Russian oil and S-400 missile systems to keep Moscow afloat as an independent power, a counterweight to China. They are paying a huge price for this with those U.S. tariffs, but they see it as a necessary geopolitical insurance policy.
That's such a critical point. They're willing to take the economic hit from the U.S. to stop Putin from falling completely into Xi's orbit.
Precisely. And then you add that final piece of the puzzle, which is BRICS.
Right. India is the chair of BRICS for 2026.
They took over on January 1st, and the theme is all about resilience and innovation. But the really sensitive part, the real drama, is about currency.
The whole de-dollarization push that we keep hearing about?
The source is very clear on this. India wants to lead the global south, and it wants to create systems to settle trade in national currencies, rupees, rubles, to get around Western sanctions. But, and this is a huge but, they have to do it without explicitly being anti-dollar.
Because that would just bring down even more wrath from the U.S. I think President Trump threatened 100% tariffs on any country that actively tries to undermine the dollar.
Exactly. So India has to thread this impossible needle. They have to build an alternative system for resilience, but frame it as being about efficiency and not about revolution.
It's incredible diplomatic gymnastics. We're not trying to replace the dollar. We're just diversifying our options.
No. It is the absolute definition of hedging. You use the Quad for security, the EU for stability, Russia for balance, and BRICS to lead the global south. A portfolio of relationships.
So let's bring it all back to that missed phone call where we started.
Yeah, it all ties together. When you look at the whole picture, the chips, the AI summit, the EU deal, the Russia strategy, you start to realize that Modi not making that phone call wasn't just some mistake. It wasn't a scheduling mix-up. It was a deliberate statement.
A statement saying what?
That India is too big, too important, and has too many other options to be treated like a client state that has to ask for permission. The source basically concludes that India is proving it can still score points even when the referee is actively moving the basket.
I like that. But the article leaves us with one final, very provocative thought. It's not just about learning to score on a rigged court.
No. The real test for India in 2026 isn't just surviving the tariffs. The real question is whether they can build enough of their own baskets through their own chip industry, their AI leadership, their European partnerships, that eventually they don't even need to play on the American referee's court at all.
Now that is the ultimate endgame. True strategic autonomy.
It is. And 2026 looks like the year we'll find out if they can really pull it off.
Absolutely fascinating. It's going to be a wild year to watch. Thank you for walking us through the arbitrary arena.
My pleasure.
And for you listening, just think about that. We see these trade deals and summits as just headlines. But right now, they're moves in a global game where the rules are literally being rewritten as we speak. Until next time, keep diving deep.